Hi, I'm Barbara Milano. Today I'm going to be demonstrating a painting. It's going to be a prickly pear. If you live in southern Arizona or any part of the Southwest, you know what a prickly pear is. I took a photograph and created a digital sketch first. And this is my digital sketch on Procreate. So that's kind of what I'm looking at. I simplified it quite a bit. In here, there was more prickly pear. This was all rocks. There's a little bit of sky. I took off the top, cropped the image, and I took off some prickly pear up here too. So very, very much simplified it. Took off a lot of the little dibby-dabby stuff, the dots, and about 90% of the pricklies. And so I've very much simplified the image. And now I'm going to go ahead and paint it. So what I've done here is started by kind of mapping out, if you will, where I'm going to put the sketch. And I'm using an art graph piece of graphite. I like these. They are permanent. So, you know, I think you have to be mindful that it might show through. I don't always do a sketch, but I kind of like the idea of maybe getting some of this graphite in the piece. So I'm going to go ahead and kind of get the basic shapes going. And so prickly pear is kind of like, you have to be careful because if you've never done one before, you're likely going to have balloons. Real easy to get balloons. They're kind of like an ovally shape. And the thing is not to include every single prickly pear you see, but to kind of go for shapes, basic shapes. See how many you can get without it looking over, you know, real intense. Otherwise, it's just like this big, distracting mess of I don't know what. I think I want this to come up. That space in there. So you can see I'm just going very gesturally for the basic movements. What was interesting is I worked on it with Procreate. I noticed that half of it was warm and half of it was cool. So this side was very warm and this side was very cool because of the way the sun is hitting it. And I thought that was pretty interesting. So I decided I'm going to play that up with some violets maybe, and some reds for warmth. My tree in the background. Yes, I don't usually do this, so somewhat of an experiment. I'm not sure I'll like it at the end of the day, but we'll find out. Already I'm liking the drawing aspect of it. I love to draw. It's kind of what painting is. We're really just drawing with paint. a couple of those negative spaces there. All right, well, that's the basic shape of it. Okay, I've gone ahead and mixed some colors here, and I'll show you what I have. This is just to get me started, really. I have titanium white, lemon yellow, cad yellow, light, cad red. This is just a mixture of something I had on the palette. I don't know what that is. Alizarin crimson, ultramarine blue, and these are some violets I had on my palette as well. Some of these are probably kind of dried out. Well, that one isn't. I mixed a couple of different violets. This you really can't tell. It's kind of like a black. It's blue, alizarin, and red, so it's a very dark brown, or it's gonna read like a black probably. This is just cad red and white. This is a mixture of gray. I took a little bit of this gray over here I had and then made another gray. And this is just a pile I moved. So with that said, let's go ahead and get started. All right. Get you nice and close there. This is not an oil primed linen. It is just plain old canvas that has been gessoed with an acrylic primer, I suppose. So I'm going to go ahead and put a little bit of linseed oil on it. It's going to blur everything out, but it'll give me a little bit of a ground. The sketch is basically my way of getting started, and it's all subject to change anyway. Some of it will remain, probably enough of it. So putting the linseed oil on it will just help the oil paint absorb a little bit better, or take. I don't know whether absorb is the right word. Accept. I think that's the word I'm looking for. Got some crumblies here for my paper towel. These are Viva. They're super absorbent, and they're more cloth-like, just like the commercial says. And they have a tendency to hold up a little better. They're more expensive, but I don't use as many. Having said that, I use a lot of paper towels. I'm going to try and keep this loose and kind of gestural as much as possible. So I'm just kind of rubbing out some light areas. So this painting doesn't have a lot of light areas in it. It's got a lot of dark in it, which is also a little different for me. I like to experiment. All right, let's see, brushes. Brushes I'm using today are Triquel and Rosemary primarily. I like these long flats. So this is that dark color I had mixed. And I like to go, you know, the traditional thin to thick thing. And I typically go a little bit darker and then lighten up as I go. It's easier, I think, to lighten something up than it is to make it darker with oil paint. Not necessarily the case with acrylic, but certainly with oil. You know, when I do this, it kind of gives me a sense of movement around the piece as well. Get directionality. So right away I'm making decisions about my composition, where I want your eye to go. Tree back here. Okay. I think that's probably good for my darks, my real dark darks. I'm also going to try, oh, you know what I didn't mix here is a green. I should do that real quick. Bring you over here to my palette. You can see what I'm doing here. It's palette knife. Actually, that's Cad Yellow Light. I'm going to use Cad Lemon. I'm going to use more yellow than blue because I want it to go lighter. I want this to be a super yellow green. More so, let's make some more over here. I have a couple different greens. I think I'm going to need some that's bluer as well. And I'm going to put a little bit of alizarin in that just to knock it down. Put a little bit of the complement will make it a little less intense. A little bit of, let's see, any of these grays working out for me? Put a little bit of this gray in here. A little bit of this gray. This gray is kind of a lavendery color. Yeah, it looks pretty good. I'll take a little bit. This is like a yellow orange. I believe I made that with Cad Yellow and Cad Red. A little bit more of that. You can see how that just warmed that up real nicely. A couple different greens here now. Go a little bluer. And actually I have quite a bit of that, so I'd rather have paint left over than have to come back and mix more. There you go. Still think that should be grayed down. There's a lot of gray in the Prickly Pear. It doesn't have to be real, you know, representative of actual prickly pear. It can have more or less color, but a little more gray. All right, I'm gonna leave that one alone, I think, for now anyway. I might put a little bit of that yellow orange in it, we'll see. Sometimes I like to actually take a little bit of an Indian yellow or a yellow oxide and glaze when the painting's done. It gives a little bit of warmth over the top too, so I could do that. All right, back to the painting. Alrighty, let's see. Let's go to the let's go to the middle, like a middle gray. I just added some more. After doing all that, I just added more gray to it. And I feel like I could actually have some lavender in it. I could go a little bit darker, but add a little more lavender to that. It's a lot easier to do this than it is plein air, that's for sure. Plein air, you have to work so fast, right? And you have to be able to decipher it like in real time. This is kind of nice because you can take your time really evaluating those shapes. The trick is not to get too crazy about it. Let's see here. Trying to figure out where things are. You'll notice I have trouble speaking when I'm working. I think that's because one part of the brain is doing something while the other is trying to gather thoughts, words. It helps if you squint too. That way you only see the values and you don't get all invested in what the shape means. You just go for the value and the shape without interpreting it, so to speak. You'll notice that once I start with a brush, I have a tendency to kind of hold on to it and work with that same brush. For quite a while, actually. Alright, let's see. There's quite a bit of dark stuff going on in here. So remember I said one side was a little warmer. I'm going to take that yellow orange that I had mixed and put some more in that middle value that we just used. Kind of put some of those notes in. It's really easy to get lost. This is that yellow green. Nice thing about these brushes are that they really do a good job of getting a nice edge on them. And they hold a lot of paint. Gonna get a little bit warmer here. I'm gonna add a little cad yellow light to that yellow green. I'm just taking that color I just made and I add a little violet to it here. So So it's going to neutralize it a little bit. And it's just a matter of keeping the values pretty tight. You want to make changes or show differences, but not dramatically so. Looks like I missed one here. Put that guy there. These toward the back are going to be a little bit more gray. So I'm using a violet for that. I'm going to add a little cad red and cad yellow to this green. This needs a little bit of white in it. I just mixed up some cad white or cad red, cad yellow, and some white here. For my foreground. During this part of the video, I'll be going a little bit quicker, so there's a lot of redundant parts in it, and I feel like you'd probably be bored out of your minds. So I'm going to go fast, but not too fast. And I will continue to tell you what I'm doing. So right here, I'm continuing to lay in now my foreground and background. You'll see I use a lot of grays and muted colors. Everything has pretty much been laid in. The process of blending and cleaning up edges, all that will come a little bit later. I'm going to begin pulling out some of my shapes now and making them a little bit stronger. I want to get the prickly pears a little bit more defined and just adding slight variations in the values, temperature mostly. Remember, I was going to have cool tones on one side and warm tones on the other side. I'm going to begin putting in my prickly pear now. So you'll see that evolve as I go around and define my shapes a little bit better. I use a combination of alizarin, red, and I think a little bit of blue. They basically start out as little marks, and they will be developed. I'm adding in a warmer, lighter cad red, and it probably has a little ultramarine in it, just to give it some warmth. I want it to be a nice, soft brown without being very dark. Here I'm going to add in a very light red. I've added white to my cad red mixture that I just used. And so it's going to give me a nice warm tone, nice and light, nice and bright for my foreground. A little bit goes in the background as well. And now I'm adding in violet, which will pretty much neutralize everything. It really makes a gray for us. it plays nicely against that yellow-orange in the prickly pear petals in the upper left corner too, and makes them stand out nicely. An earthy green. My effort here is to pick up colors that are just earthy, natural, mid-tone. Maybe a couple highlights, but we really want it to read as pretty mid-tone. So now, as you can see, I'm adding some highlights to the prickly pear and putting a little more detail on those. By bringing in some of these warm reddish tones, kind of a pinkish cast, it's going to really soften up the blue-green gray that I've got going and give it some unity with the foreground and the background. It's a temperature shift. And it gives a sense of light as well. At this stage of the painting, we're about a little bit more than halfway through. I've got the design, everything is laid in, and I can start refining my prickly pear petals and getting more definition around them, highlighting what I want to highlight, push back what I don't want to have so prominent in the painting, do some blending, and then finally I'll be adding details. If you want to take a break, this might be a great place to stop. One of the things you have to remember about a prickly pear is that the petals are fairly flat. They're only about a 1/4 inch wide, sometimes a 1/2 inch wide. So you don't want them to, if you don't want them to look like a balloon or a potato or some other round object, you have to give them some kind of an edge that defines how deep they are. Maybe wide wasn't the right word. But you can see that in these shapes I'm trying to indicate edges, and by doing so it flattens out the petals. You'll also notice that to do these edges and finer details, I have switched to a smaller brush. It's still a flat brush, but I get that really lovely edge from these Trekell brushes. They're fairly new to me, and I'm really enjoying them. Shout out to Trickell. Here I'm going to switch to a larger brush. This is a large rosemary brush. Shout out to rosemary brushes. I've been using them for quite a long time, and they're pretty amazing. So this is a great brush for larger areas, and it does have also, for a round brush, a pretty nice edge to it when I need it. The tree becomes an important part of the composition because the top of the tree is going to lead you back into the prickly pear. So I've got this motion that's taking you from the right to the left, and then that tree branch that comes down will lead you back to where you began. So this particular painting will have a circular pattern. Once I am satisfied with the bulk of the prickly pear, I'll start going in with my finer details, which are coming up very, very soon. So this part wasn't working, and clearly I didn't like it. So I took my trusted palette knife, scraped it back, and now I am redefining this prickly pear scenario. There's a paddle that's going behind the paddle that's got a little bit of blue on it, and I'm trying to get that sense of which is forward and which is behind. One is on a flat plane, and then the other one is more on an angled plane. Prickly pear grow in many different directions. It's one of the challenges of painting a prickly pear, but it's also one of the more fun things about it. So this is where I start putting in the details on the prickly pear. These are the ones I took out of my Procreate because they were too distracting. Now that I can see all of my petals more clearly, I still want to put them in because they are a part of the plant. I don't want to put in each and every dot because they would be very, very distracting. and I don't really want you to be focused on those kinds of details. The cactus needles will come out of these dots, and they're all over the paddle, not just on the edges. Those are the ones that catch the most light. You'll see that I will be putting needles across the plant as well. They make an interesting texture, I think, on the paddles. So we want to include them for sure. But I don't want them to overwhelm or take over the painting. As they say, the devil is in the details. And if you recall, at the very beginning, I said I wanted to keep this kind of loose. So that's what I'm trying to do here. As I begin to put in the needles, I should point out that I'm using the palette knife edge and I'm lifting up as I go along so that the very tip of that needle is soft, almost like the atmosphere catches it. The needles are very delicate and fine on the edges. So I really want to catch that in my painting and get the thinness, the sensitivity of just how fine those needles are. I'm also not using white, although it probably looks like I am. I'm using pinks, yellows, light green, depending upon where I'm putting it. But it's so subtle you really don't see it unless you're up very close to it. In the latter part of the day, they can look orange or red. Now I'm going to be putting in my tree branches, which I mentioned is important because that line I just made, these lines coming in over the top, are actually what's going to pull me back into where I start in the painting. So I want that movement to start from the right, go left, go up to the tree, and come back around again. And everything is pointing to that focal, very bright yellow-green paddle in the upper left. I'm going to add a little bit more detail back in. Again, not too much, just enough so that the viewer knows this is in fact a prickly pear, and it is somewhat botanically correct, if not for every detail. Some of what I'm doing here is less about the prickly pear itself and about the design. I want those needles to go into the dark spaces. It will give them much more presence. And what else can I say about that? Yeah. Texture. I mean, I love the texture. And this will give us that gritty southern Arizona desert texture that we expect. As I finesse and come to the conclusion of the painting, I hope you enjoyed it. If you like this, please give me a like at the bottom and feel free to share with your friends. Send them to my YouTube channel. I hope you'll look at some of my other videos and follow me. My website is linked in the bio. I teach classes, Zoom, if you'd like to try that. So feel free to reach out to me and ask questions. I am available. I like to think I'm approachable. And yeah, please come again.